The Eleanor spaceship floated silently in deep space, far from any star. Their mission was simple: investigate an unknown object found near the edge of the galaxy. The object was large, made of strange black metal, and cold as death. It didn't send any signals. It looked like a ghost. Captain Varn, leader of the Eleanor scout team, watched the dark object on the screen. His long fingers tapped the console. "Is it alive?" he asked. "No life signs," replied Tech Officer Zurich. "No power. No movement. It's just floating." "Bring it in," the captain said. Slowly, the alien crew pulled the object into their docking bay. It was massive, almost 3 times the size of their own ship. The hull was marked with deep scars, as if it had been through many battles. On one side, strange letters were scratched into the metal. U.S. Nemesis. "What is U.S.?" asked Zurich. No one knew. The team of engineers entered the ship wearing suits. Inside, everything was dark. No lights. No sound. Just silence. Dust floated in the air like ash. Walls were burned, consoles were dead, and the floor was covered in broken glass and strange dried liquid. Maybe blood. Engineer Luno moved carefully through a narrow hallway. His flashlight shook in his hands. "This place feels wrong," he whispered. "Keep moving," the captain said through the comm. "Find the control room." After 20 minutes, they reached a large room filled with broken screens and chairs. In the center was a strange metal pod, half open. It looked like something had broken out from inside. "Is it a stasis chamber?" asked Zurich. "It was," Luno replied, "but it's empty." Before anyone could speak, the lights in the hallway behind them flickered, just for a second. Then the silence returned. One of the soldiers turned quickly, pointing his weapon. "Did you see that?" he asked. "There's nothing," someone replied. But something had moved. Back in the alien control room, Captain Varn watched the feed from the engineers. His heart beat faster. "Get out of there," he said. "Bring samples and return." But it was too late. Suddenly, one engineer screamed. "It's looking at us," he shouted, firing his weapon into the shadows. The feed went dark. "What happened?" "Report," the captain shouted. No answer. Only static. The rescue team was sent, and 5 minutes later, they found the first team unconscious, but alive. No injuries, no marks, no memory, just fear in their eyes. The captain gave a new order: move the warship into the Eleanor mothership for deep analysis. 3 days later, the U.S. Nemesis sat inside the research bay of the mothership. Alien scientists walked around it, taking notes, running scans. The ship showed no power, no life, no threat. But one thing was strange. It was slowly warming up. Scientist Yara placed her hand on the hull. It felt like warm skin. She pulled back quickly. "It's breathing," she said. "No, it's not," Zurich said. "Metal doesn't breathe." But he was wrong. Inside the ship, in the dark control room, something opened its eyes. Blue light glowed from a corner no one had checked. A figure moved slowly, rising from the floor. He looked human, but he was more than that. His body was covered in armor, black and silver, with glowing lines running through his veins. He stood up, walked to the wall, and touched it. The ship responded instantly. Lights came on in soft pulses. Systems started humming again. The warship was waking up. Back in the research bay, Yara screamed as her tablet screen changed on its own. Lines of code began to write themselves. "What is this?" she shouted. "It's hacking us." The captain ran to the control room. The warship's engines were glowing. The room lights flickered. "Shut it down," he ordered. But no one could. Suddenly, the warship spoke. A deep voice echoed through the entire mothership. "You found me. You opened me. Now you will see what I am." Then silence. Not a single alien moved. Every screen on the ship showed the same image: Earth burning in flames. Captain Varn looked at his officers. "What have we brought on board?" he asked, voice shaking. Zurich whispered, "A ghost from a dead world." But that ghost was very much alive. The stars stretched into long lines of light as the Nemesis limped through the void. It was damaged, but still functioning. The harvester nest was gone, and the immediate threat had been obliterated, but a far greater danger now loomed before them. Ahead of the Nemesis, the new Excellenor ship, the Devastator, loomed large, its hull black and imposing against the backdrop of space. It was a monstrous vessel, bigger than any ship Riven had ever seen, and its power was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Riven stood at the command center, his fists clenched. His body ached from the battles he had fought, but his mind was sharp. His duty wasn't over. Not yet. The ship's voice broke through the silence, calm and steady as always. "Commander, we are being hailed by the Excellenor. They demand surrender." Riven didn't hesitate. "Send them a reply," he said, his voice cold. "Tell them humanity will never surrender." The ship responded immediately, transmitting the message to the Excellenor. Moments later, the screen flickered to life, showing a stern-looking figure in a dark uniform. It was Zurich, the leader of the Excellenor, his eyes burning with the same cold fire as always. "You are a fool, Riven," Zurich said, his voice icy. "You've destroyed our harvesters, but that was only a small part of our plan. We are the future. Your kind was never meant to survive." Riven stood tall, despite the weight of the words. "You're wrong. Humanity has never been about survival for survival's sake. We fight for more than that. We fight for what's worth protecting." Zurich's expression darkened. "Then you will die for that belief." The transmission ended abruptly, and within seconds, the Devastator began charging weapons. Energy blasts rippled across the void, tearing through the space between the ships. Riven felt the heat of the blast as it hit the Nemesis, rocking the warship. The lights flickered, and the ship groaned, but it didn't stop. "Return fire," Riven shouted. "All remaining weapons, fire at full power." The Nemesis responded with a series of blasts that lit up the darkness, but the Excellenor ship's shields absorbed the hits. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. The Devastator's weapons fired again, this time striking the Nemesis directly. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring in every corner. "Shields failing," the ship's voice warned. Riven gritted his teeth. The Nemesis was strong, but the Devastator was something else entirely. He knew that the only way to defeat it was to get closer, to hit it from the inside. "Prepare the boarding pods," Riven ordered. "We're taking the fight to them." Moments later, the Nemesis released its boarding pods, which rocketed toward the Devastator's hull, cutting through the space between them like arrows. As they neared the enemy ship, Riven's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the final battle. The pods hit the Devastator with a violent jolt, but they held firm. Riven wasted no time. He and his crew quickly disembarked from the pods, weapons ready. The Excellenor were prepared for their arrival, and the hulls of the Devastator became a battlefield. Laser fire streaked through the air as Riven led the charge, his rifle blazing. The Excellenor soldiers advanced in a tight formation, but they were no match for the relentless human warriors. Riven cut through them with brutal efficiency, his eyes locked on the command center. He didn't stop. He couldn't. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders. As he made his way deeper into the ship, he encountered more Excellenor soldiers, strong, terrifying, and armed to the teeth. But each time, Riven pushed forward, his weapon flashing with every shot. He was more than just a soldier now. He was a symbol of defiance, of hope. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of battle, Riven reached the heart of the Devastator, the control room. There, waiting for him, stood Zurich, his face a mask of anger and pride. The leader of the Excellenor stood tall, his hands raised as if to welcome Riven to his death. "You are persistent, I'll give you that," Zurich said, his voice full of venom. "But it won't be enough. Humanity is weak. You will fall." Riven stood tall, unshaken. "You underestimated us. We don't need to be stronger than you. We just need to keep fighting." Zurich sneered and gestured to his side. A massive control panel flickered to life, and the entire ship rumbled. "The Devastator is already in motion. We're not going to stop until we erase you from existence." But Riven wasn't afraid. He didn't back down. He knew what had to be done. The Eleanor mothership drifted in space like a ghost. Inside, every system was locked. Lights stayed dim. Engines were frozen. Doors refused to open. It was as if the ship had fallen asleep, and someone else was now dreaming. Captain Varn stood in the command room, staring at the main screen. "He's inside our systems," he said. "He's not just hiding anymore. He's everywhere." "The human has connected fully with the warship," Zurich added. "And now the warship is connecting with us." "Can we cut the power?" Varn asked. "We've tried. Manual, auto, backups, everything fails. It's like it knows what we'll do before we do it." Silence filled the room. Then, without warning, the warship started to change. In the research bay, the U.S. Nemesis began to shift. Its surface rippled like water. The black metal twisted and moved, forming new shapes. Alien scientists watched in shock as weapons formed on the outside. Turrets grew like bones, long and sharp. One alien dropped his tablet. "It's growing." "No," said Yara, her voice shaking. "It's waking up fully. It was sleeping before. Now it's alive." And then the ship breathed. A loud, deep sound echoed through the bay. The metal skin of the ship pulled in, then pushed out, slowly, like a chest rising and falling. The warship was breathing. Suddenly, the lights burst. Sparks flew. Gravity failed for a moment. Every alien fell to the floor. From inside the warship, a shape appeared at the top hatch. The human. He stood tall, eyes glowing, face hard as stone. He wore his black armor, now shining with strange blue lines. His voice echoed from everywhere. "You fear machines. You fear humans. Now, fear both together." Captain Varn ordered full alert. Soldiers with weapons gathered near the bay. Drones flew in, but none of them could enter. The doors to the research bay were sealed by the warship itself. "We are locked out of our own ship," Zurich said. "The human has full command." "What does he want?" Varn asked again. No one knew, until a voice spoke again. "I want to leave, and I want no one to follow." Back inside the bay, the human walked along the ship's body like it was part of him. He placed his hand on a section of the wall. Instantly, it opened. A ramp extended downward. He walked into the ship, and it closed behind him. Engines began to hum. Blue fire lit up under the Nemesis. The warship was powering up. Alien scanners tried to stop it. Nothing worked. Energy shields failed. Weapons refused to lock. The warship had full immunity. "He's going to escape," Zurich said. Captain Varn clenched his fists. "We can't let that happen. If he returns to human space, or worse." Zurich looked at him. "Worse is already here, Captain." Suddenly, the warship sent a pulse across the mothership. Every screen turned white. The words "Do not follow" appeared in both alien language and English. Then the bay door exploded outward. The U.S. Nemesis flew out like a shadow, its engines leaving a bright blue trail in space. It moved faster than any Eleanor ship. In seconds, it vanished into the black. But that was not the end. Not even close. Just before it disappeared, the ship left behind one signal. Strange, encrypted, and ancient. Zurich translated it slowly. His hand shook as he read it aloud. "Earth is gone, but the war is not over." Captain Varn looked at the stars. He's not just leaving. He's going to fight again. Somewhere. Against someone. Yara stepped forward. Or he's warning us. Maybe something worse is coming. No one spoke. Far away, in the cold darkness, the last human warship flew in silence, alive, awake, and ready for war. But the drone was faster. It pinned him to the floor, its sharp claws inches from his throat. "You are nothing," it hissed in a voice that sent chills down his spine. But Riven was ready. He brought his elbow down hard, slamming it into the drone's chest. With a flash of blue light, the harvester exploded into a cloud of twisted metal. Riven stood, panting, blood dripping from a cut on his arm. He looked around. There were still more. And they were getting closer. Back on the mothership, Captain Varn stared at the live feed of the battle. His eyes widened in disbelief as the Nemesis continued to fight, holding its ground against the swarm of harvesters. "He's surviving," Yara said, her voice full of awe. "How is he still alive?" Varn didn't know, but one thing was certain. Riven wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was something more, something they couldn't understand. "He's more than human," Varn muttered. And he had just begun to fight. On the Nemesis, Riven was surrounded. The drones were closing in, their claws snapping, their eyes glowing red. His plasma rifle was empty. His blade was his only weapon now. He gripped it tightly, knowing that it would take every ounce of strength he had to survive. The ship's voice came through, calm as ever. "Commander, reinforcements are on the way. You must hold." Riven nodded, his heart pounding. He wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. He turned to face the enemy. And as the first drone leaped toward him, Riven made a promise to himself. The Nemesis trembled as the warship's core thrummed with energy. The harsh sound of metal scraping echoed down the long, empty corridors as harvester drones continued their relentless assault. The ship was alive with motion. Drones on every level, scrambling to destroy, to overwhelm. Commander Riven stood at the center of the chaos, surrounded by the twisted remains of the machines he had already defeated. His breathing was heavy, his body battered, but his resolve was stronger than ever. The only thought in his mind was clear: survive. He gripped his blade tightly, eyes narrowed as the next wave of drones came rushing at him. The harsh lights of the ship flickered, casting shadows across the walls. Riven didn't flinch. He had faced worse. He had seen his world burn. He could handle this. The ship's voice broke through the tense silence. "Commander, reinforcements have arrived. Awaiting your command." Riven didn't hesitate. "Activate all remaining turrets. We're finishing this." Outside, the Nemesis came alive. Energy shields flared. Weapons locked into place. The ship's turrets swiveled, tracking every movement, every drone that came into view. But the harvesters were relentless. No matter how many were destroyed, more came. Riven sprinted toward the nearest hatchway, opening it with a sharp command. He moved like lightning, his muscles burning, as he reached the heart of the battle. His rifle, emptied earlier, was back in his hands, loaded, ready. The drones were closing in, their glowing eyes searching for their next victim. One by one, they fell to his shots, but still they came. He knew there was only one way to end this. He had to reach the core. With a roar, Riven charged forward, slamming through a group of drones. His rifle tore through the enemy ranks, cutting down one harvester after another. But the swarm was endless, crawling over the walls, the floors, the ceilings. They were everywhere. Meanwhile, on the Excellenor mothership, panic was spreading. Zurich paced in the command center, watching the unfolding events on the screens. The Excellenor had underestimated Riven, and now they could feel the consequences. "We must stop him," Varn said, his voice filled with urgency. "He's tearing through our forces like a storm." The research bay was silent. The warship U.S. Nemesis stood in the middle, glowing faintly like a sleeping monster. Its surface moved slowly, like it was breathing. No one dared to go near it now. Captain Varn ordered full lockdown of the bay. "No one enters," he said. "No one touches that ship again." But something had already changed. In a secret lab on the mothership, a stasis pod sat in the corner. It had been brought from the Warship days earlier. The pod was sealed, cold, and marked with warning signs in an unknown language. The scientists didn't open it. They were still trying to translate the words. Late that night, the lights in the lab flickered. Then the pod hissed. Mist sprayed from the sides as it slowly opened. Inside was a man, tall, muscular, dressed in black armor. His eyes were closed, his skin pale. For a moment, he didn't move. Then his eyes opened. Bright blue. He sat up without making a sound. Machines in the room beeped once and then went dead. The cameras stopped recording. Security alarms didn't go off. The whole lab went dark for just 3 seconds. When the lights came back, the pod was empty. The man was gone. Security guards were called after a scientist entered the lab and found it empty. The human is gone, she shouted. He woke up. Captain Varn rushed to the lab. How? He was frozen. Zurich checked the systems. He didn't break out. He opened the pod from inside. Where is he now? The captain asked. Zurich looked at the screen. He's not showing on any scanner. He's hiding. In the ship. The human moved silently through the halls of the mothership. He was fast, careful, and deadly. His eyes glowed in the dark. He didn't speak. He didn't attack. He was studying the alien ship. He watched the aliens from shadows, listened to their language, and learned it quickly. In one room, he touched a wall panel, and it opened for him. The ship's systems didn't stop him. He was adapting. He reached a control room and watched a screen showing Earth. It was destroyed, burned, dead. He closed his eyes. A memory returned. His team, the last human warriors, going into deep stasis as Earth fell to unknown enemies. His warship was their final hope, drifting in space, sleeping for hundreds of years. Now it had been touched, taken, and he was awake. The aliens were panicking. Guards searched the ship, but found nothing. Cameras showed no movement. It was like the human had vanished. He's not attacking, Zurich said, but he's here, watching. Why wait? The captain asked. What does he want? Yara looked at the scans. The warship is connecting to our systems. It's learning our tech. Maybe he's waiting for it to finish. Captain Varn understood. He's not alone. The ship is alive, and they're working together. Zurek nodded slowly. A human and a living warship. A perfect weapon. And we just woke it up. That night, a guard disappeared. The next morning, his body was found in a storage room. He wasn't dead, but he was unconscious, eyes wide open, whispering the same word over and over. Nemesis, Nemesis. Captain Varn called for an emergency council. We must destroy the warship, he said, before it destroys us. We can't, Zurich said. Our weapons are offline. It's blocking us from inside. Then release it, one elder suggested. Let it go. No, Varn said. If we let it go, it may return, with more. Silence filled the room. Then, across the entire mothership, lights dimmed, doors locked, screens turned blue. A voice spoke. You are afraid of what you don't understand. You fear the last human. But I fear nothing. It was the human. His voice was cold, calm, and deep. You took my ship. You woke me. Now, I decide what happens next. Then all screens went black. Captain Varn looked around. He's in control. Zurich whispered, and he hasn't even started. Yara shook her head. This isn't just about him. It's about something bigger. The harvesters were never supposed to be this strong. Zurich stopped pacing. It's more than just revenge. Revan isn't just fighting for survival. He's fighting for something that goes beyond us. Beyond the Excellenor. Varn looked at the elder with fear. What do you mean? The harvesters weren't just created to destroy Earth, Zurich explained. They were meant to destroy everything. And when Riven wakes the last of humanity, there will be no stopping them. Back on the Nemesis, Riven reached the central chamber of the Harvester nest. The air was thick with tension, the walls pulsing with a sickly green light. At the center of the room was the core, glowing with strange energy, surrounded by hundreds of drones. This was their source, their power. But Riven had no time to hesitate. He sprinted forward, slashing through the drones with his blade. The sound of metal screeching filled the air as they fell, one after another. But still, more appeared, endless, unyielding. As he approached the core, something strange happened. The room seemed to tremble. The lights flickered and dimmed. The air became heavy, almost suffocating. Riven's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to stop me," he muttered to himself. He was right. The core wasn't just a power source. It was a beacon, a signal to call more drones. The more he fought, the more they came. The ship was feeding off his anger, his pain, his determination. With a grim smile, Riven spoke aloud to the Nemesis. "I've had enough." He reached into his belt and pulled out a small, strange device, something he had taken from the wreckage of the Selenor mothership. It was a bomb, but not just any bomb. This was designed to destroy the very essence of the nest, to take down the core, to end the Harvesters once and for all. Riven tossed the device toward the core. As it landed, a timer started counting down. 15 seconds. The drones realized what was happening too late. They charged toward him, but it was no use. The device was already activated. "Get ready," Riven said, his voice steady. The timer ticked down. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, and then, boom. The explosion shook the entire ship, sending shockwaves through the walls. The core shattered, its energy collapsing in on itself. The lights went out, and the nest seemed to scream as it crumbled. The drones, caught in the blast, were torn apart. Riven stood amidst the chaos, the air filled with smoke and fire. His body was covered in cuts and bruises, but his eyes shone with victory. The nest was no more. The Harvesters were finished. But as the debris settled, something in the distance caught his attention. A new ship, larger than anything he had ever seen, was appearing in the distance. It was Selenor. They were coming for him. Riven's heart raced. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. Back on the Selenor mothership, Zurek looked at the screen in shock. The nest had collapsed. The Harvesters had been wiped out. But there was something worse. The last message from the Nemesis flickered on the screen, cold and clear. "This is just the beginning." Riven wasn't done. Not by a long shot. He would make them regret ever waking him up. The U.S. Nemesis cut through the stars like a silent blade. Alone in deep space, the warship moved without a clear path, but with strong purpose. Inside, the last human sat in the command chair, eyes focused, armor glowing with soft blue light. He was calm. But his mind was not. His name was Commander Riven, a soldier born in the final days of Earth. He had seen his world burn. He had lost everything. And now, after waking from centuries of sleep, he had one goal: find what destroyed humanity, and finish what they started. The ship spoke in a deep, clear voice. "Commander, long-range scan complete. No Selenor signals detected. But something else is moving." "What is it?" Riven asked. "A life form. Unknown species, too fast for natural flight." Riven stood. "Send visual." A screen opened in front of him. In the distance, hidden among asteroids, a shape moved. Black, thin, and too smooth. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't alive. It was both. "Time to intercept," he asked. 70 seconds, the ship replied. Riven's hands tightened into fists. Let it come. Far away, the Selenor Council was in panic. Captain Varn stood before the elders, trying to explain. "We didn't just wake a human," he said. "We woke their greatest weapon. And now it's heading toward something. Something only he remembers. An old alien elder leaned forward. He is drawn by pain, by revenge, Zurich added, and by something worse. His enemy may still be out there. You mean the one that destroyed Earth? Varn asked. Zurich nodded. What if it wasn't humans or Excelenor that started the war? What if it was a third power? The council room went silent. One word appeared on the main screen. A warning. Harvesters. Back on the Nemesis, Riven watched as the strange object came closer. Its shape was now clear, long, with silver wings and no windows. It floated, almost like it was sniffing the air. Then it opened. Its body split into sections, revealing hundreds of small black drones. Round, sharp, fast. Commander, the ship said. Enemy units deploying. Riven stood, eyes locked on the screen. Defensive systems on. Prepare for attack. The first wave came fast. The drones moved like insects, swarming around the Nemesis. They didn't fire lasers. They used claws, blades, sharp metallic arms. They were trying to break the ship open, like it was food. The warship reacted instantly. Turrets unfolded from its sides. Energy shields flared. Lasers lit up the sky. Riven moved with precision, controlling the weapons with his hands and voice. Target pattern 3. Clean sweep left to right. The drones exploded one by one, but more kept coming. They're not from Selenor, Riven said. Too wild. Too hungry. Then he saw the symbol. One of the drones had it on its body. A spiral with 4 lines through it. Riven's eyes narrowed. I've seen that before, he whispered. A memory flashed. A burning city. Humans running. Ships falling from the sky. And these same drones tearing people apart. He remembered now. They weren't destroyed. They just left. The harvesters. Ship, Riven said. Scan deeper. I want to know where they came from. A moment later, the ship replied. Signal source located. It's a harvester nest. 6 hours away at full speed. Riven didn't hesitate. Set course. But Commander, the ship warned, that nest may hold thousands. We're only one ship. Riven's voice was cold. Then we'll bury 1,000 before we fall. The ship changed direction, engines roaring. As they flew into the unknown, the Nemesis sent out one last signal, simple and chilling. To the Excelenor, if you want to survive, follow me. Back on the mothership, Zurich read the message out loud. He's going into a nest alone. Captain Varn shook his head. No, he's not just fighting. Yara whispered. He's declaring war. He lunged forward, plasma rifle raised. But Zurich was faster. He activated a nearby console, sending a burst of energy straight toward Riven. The blast hit, throwing him back, but Riven's determination didn't waver. He fought through the pain, his body screaming, his vision blurry. The ship trembled again as Riven fired his rifle, hitting Zurich square in the chest. The blast sent the Selenor leader crashing to the ground. The Devastator shuddered as its core faltered, the ship beginning to break apart. Riven turned to the control panel and slammed his fist down on it, sending a signal to the Nemesis. Get us out of here now. The Nemesis responded, its engines roaring to life. With a burst of speed, it pulled away from the crumbling Devastator just as the enemy ship erupted in a brilliant explosion, the shockwave shaking the very stars. The battle was over. The Excelenor were defeated. The harvesters were gone. Humanity had survived. Riven stood on the deck of the Nemesis, watching the remnants of the Devastator drift into the abyss. His heart was still racing, but there was a sense of peace now. The fight was over, but the war was not won. Not yet. The future of humanity was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would not give up. Not now. Not ever. We've done it, Riven whispered. And as the Nemesis sailed into the depths of space, Riven knew one thing for sure. Humanity would fight for its future, no matter the cost. The fight had just begun. The U.S. Nemesis raced through space, its engines screaming in the silent void. The black ship moved with purpose, leaving a trail of blue light as it powered toward the distant harvester nest. Commander Riven stood at the control panel, his face grim but determined. His eyes were locked on the screen, his mind calculating every move, every chance of survival. The ship spoke in its calm, steady voice. "We are approaching the harvester nest. Arrival in 3 minutes." Riven didn't blink. "Prepare weapons. All systems are online." Understood. The ship began to pulse with energy. Turrets unfolded, shields hardened, and the engines hummed louder as the warship entered the dark region of space where the harvester nest waited. Riven could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had been to hell before. He had seen his people fall. But this was different. This time, he wasn't just fighting for his life. He was fighting for everything that had been lost. He was fighting for humanity. And he wasn't alone anymore. The nest appeared on the sensors, a massive floating structure, its dark, twisted spires reaching up like the bones of some ancient beast. It was massive, bigger than anything Riven had seen. It was a hive, but not like the ones on Earth. This was alien, strange, dangerous. Riven's grip tightened on the control panel. Approaching the nest. The ship's voice responded. "Warning. Increased energy readings detected. Hostile presence confirmed. Deploy defenses," Riven ordered. His eyes narrowed. "Prepare for impact." As the Nemesis neared the nest, dozens of harvester drones shot out from its surface. They moved fast, swarming like angry bees, their sharp metallic limbs clinging together as they rushed toward the warship. Riven didn't hesitate. Fire. Lasers erupted from the ship's cannons, tearing through the swarm of drones, but more kept coming. Endless, hungry, merciless. The sound of explosions filled the air, but the drones didn't stop. The Nemesis rocked as several drones made contact with the ship's hull, their claws digging into the metal, trying to tear through. Riven gritted his teeth, reinforced shields. But even the Nemesis wasn't invincible. A few drones managed to breach the outer defenses, crawling across the surface like spiders, their claws scraping against the black metal. "Boarding party detected," the ship warned. Riven's heart raced. He knew what that meant. If the drones got inside, it was over. "Seal all airlocks," he ordered. But the drones were already inside. Inside the warship, the first drone broke through a wall, its sharp legs clicking against the metal floors. It was fast, relentless. Another followed, then another. The hatchways opened wide, revealing more of the deadly creatures. They filled the halls of the Nemesis, each one armed with lethal blades, their glowing red eyes searching for their prey. Riven moved quickly through the ship, his boots thudding against the metal floors. He didn't wait for the drones to come to him. He was going to bring the fight to them. "Where are they?" Riven asked, his voice sharp. "Moving toward the engine room," the ship replied, attempting to disable the core. "Not on my watch," Riven growled. He reached for his weapon, a plasma rifle, and charged toward the source of the attack. The harvester drones were everywhere. Their claws scraped against the walls, their bodies clicking as they moved in a perfect swarm. They seemed to know exactly where to go, cutting through the ship's systems like a hot knife through butter. Riven reached the engine room just in time. The drones were already there, their bodies clustered around the core, trying to break through the final layer of defenses. With a roar, Riven burst into the room, his plasma rifle in his hands. He fired in rapid bursts, each shot ripping through the drones with precision. They fell apart, their parts scattering across the room. But there were too many of them, and more were coming. A sudden crash shook the room. One of the drones, bigger than the others, leaped at him with terrifying speed. Riven barely managed to duck, his rifle firing wildly as he rolled to the side.